Please note, the comments and demos presented in this training apply to Autodesk Smoke 2013 Pre-Release Trial 1. This software is in active development, so screens and functions will change over time. Hi, this is Larry Jordan, and this is Session 2, Create a New User and Project. In this session, I want to provide a warning about setting scratch disks, show you how to create a new user, and show how to create a new project. When you create a new project, you're actually creating a host of new database entries, but no project file. Instead, Smoke manages all your projects and media behind the scenes. Just as you log into your computer, you log into Smoke, and this allows an unlimited number of users to have individually customized preferences and keyboard shortcuts. And unlike other applications, scratch disks are set during installation. And this brings me to a warning. Scratch disks in Smoke, by default, are called Autodesk Media Storage. These scratch disks store render files, capture files, transcodes, and all the media that is managed by Smoke. However, their location is set during installation of the software. If, like me, you weren't paying attention to where the installer placed this folder, it will probably be stored on your boot disk, which is the world's worst place to store scratch disks. If you're in the same position I am, contact Smoke's technical support for instructions on how to move the location of this folder. Autodesk is actively supporting Smoke during this pre-release phase. A couple definitions to help clarify some terms. Managed media is media that is transcoded into the intermediate codec, which you set when you create a project. It's stored in the Autodesk Media Storage folder, and it's managed by Smoke. Unmanaged media is media that is stored in its native format, stored in whatever location you specify, and simply linked into Smoke. Managed media offers better performance and reliability, while unmanaged media offers flexibility. This is very similar to editing optimized versus native media in Final Cut Pro 10. When we set project settings, these settings determine the default image size, frame rate, render format, and timecode of your project. When you capture media, it's captured using the project settings. The best practice is to set project settings to match your final deliverable. User settings identify the user and set preferences and keyboard shortcuts by user. This is similar to how Avid Media Composer and Blackmagic Design's Resolve identify users. Oh, one other note. This version of Smoke is still very much in development, and there will be several pre-release versions. Autodesk welcomes your comments on how to make Smoke better, so if your version looks different from my version, now you know why. So let me show you how to add Smoke to the dock, how to create a new user, how to create a new project, and how to understand common project settings. When Smoke is first installed on your system, it's installed in your Applications folder in an Autodesk folder. If you twirl it down, you'll see the Smoke 2013 Pre-Release 1 folder. And there are two files, the Smoke application itself and an uninstaller. Because Smoke does not automatically install to the dock, the easiest way to run Smoke is to grab the icon, drag it over to your dock, and add it to the other applications you have there. Whether you start the application from the dock or start it from the application folder, you'll still end up in the same place. I just like starting things from the dock because it's easier. So let's start Smoke. Welcome to Autodesk Smoke 2013, Pre-Release Trial Version 1. Just as you need to log into your computer, you also need to log into Autodesk Smoke. But before you can log in, you have to create both a new user and a project. Let's start over here with the new user side, and we'll click the New button. When the New User dialog opens up, there's really only two things we need to set, even though there's a lot of choices here. We need to create a new username. Now this needs to be a single group of characters, no special punctuation, no spaces. Keep it simple, something you can remember. So once you've given yourself a username, you then have a choice to make, whether you want to work with Smoke Final Cut 7 shortcuts, or Flame shortcuts, which is an Autodesk product, or Smoke Classic, which are the keyboard shortcuts that Smoke used before this version of Smoke. We're going to work with the Smoke FCP7 keyboard shortcuts. So I've given myself a username, selected what shortcuts I want to use, and click the Create button. After a few seconds, the new user is created. Let's say I need to create a second user. Again, create new. In this case, we'll create a user called, Fred, and press the Enter key to accept the name. I'm going to leave the keyboard shortcuts to Smoke FCP7. Click the Create button. If you decide that you need to go back and edit a particular user, make sure the user is set in this pop-up menu. Click Edit. Either change the name or change the keyboard shortcuts. If you need to delete a user, click on the Modify User pop-up and click Delete User. Once you've decided what you want to do or the changes you want to make, click Delete. It says, whoa, you sure? I say, yep, I am. Click it. Poof, gone. We now have a user, Larry, and we'll be using that for the rest of this training. Once you've got the user configured, and you don't have to do it first, I just find it's a lot easier. It helps my brain to function because you only need to create the user one time. You're always going to be creating new projects. You're rarely going to be creating new users. Now we go to the project side and click New. This screen looks a bit scary, but it's just like, audio video setup inside Final Cut 7 or like the new project preferences inside Premiere. You got to tell Smoke what you're doing. So let's create a project. We'll call it My First Project. Notice that it's storing the project file and all the render files to the Autodesk Media Storage. We talked about that at the beginning of this presentation. Then Setup Directory, just ignore that. Setup Mode, ignore that. Config Template has a very weird name, but what you're doing here is you are selecting three things. You're selecting the resolution of your project, you're selecting the frame rate of your project, and you're selecting the time code of your project. Because I want to work with something a little bit on the smaller side, I'm going to work with 1280 720. So I'm going to go up to here, and I don't want to work with 50 frames. I want to work with 60 frames, which is right there. So, and I want to work with progressive, so it's 1280, 720, 60 frames a second, progressive, and click that. Once you've got the config template set, we then need to set resolution. Now the config template is setting part of this. Resolution sets the other part, and in general, you want to have the two of these agree. So here I'm setting my screen resolution, which is the resolution that my render files are going to be set at and my capture files. Set that to 1280, 720. It's really important to match the bit depth of your project or sequence with the bit depth of the video that you're ingesting or importing. And you set the bit depth setting in this pop-up menu. Rendering. Here we have two choices. If Smoke supports your graphics processing unit, select GPU. If it doesn't, select CPU. In this case, we're going to select GPU and we're going to let Smoke figure it out, and it does a great job. Intermediate renders, another strange word for a very common function. Intermediate renders are your transcode settings. I've decided that I want to work at 1280 720. What that means is all of my media which comes into this project will be managed and transcoded by Smoke to equal that resolution. So I'm going to have my intermediate renders be set to a number of different options. Uncompressed is the traditional way that Smoke has worked, uncompressed DPX frames. We then also have access to the 5 flavors of ProRes, 422HQ, 4x4, 422, Light, and Proxy. If you're taking the time to move your projects up to Smoke, I would recommend against using Proxy or LT. I would recommend either 422, 4x4, or 422. If you need alpha channels, it needs to be ProRes 4x4. ProRes 422HQ is an excellent choice. It balances outstanding image quality with relatively small file sizes. Given the choice, if your images look good to start with, set it to HQ. So that's the default. Let's just leave it set there. This determines format restrictions. Just leave that alone. Just nod your head wisely. Say, another time. I'm going to worry about it then. Proxy settings. Don't go here. Leave proxies off. Way too much pain. Even explaining it causes my brain to hurt. Proxies don't need to be used, especially in a pre-release version. Don't create them. Don't worry about them. Just work with the standard formats. Once you've got that set, click Create. Done. If you just want to celebrate the fact that you survived getting this all set up, because this is the hard part. Everything else after this is easy. You've made it through the worst of it. If you just want to celebrate and you want to quit, click Exit or type Command Q. Once you've done this a few times, creating a new project won't seem very daunting. Remember, be sure the scratch disk is set correctly, then leave it alone. Once you've created a new user, Smoke remembers you. And take time to set your project settings carefully. You can change them later, but a little planning can save you a lot of time. My name is Larry Jordan, and thanks for watching.